Business is an evolution. A football game's not. I think a football game's a revolution. It's 4-quarter revolution.
Right. Yeah.
It's not an evolution. The seasons end, games end, quarter, like literally have ends.
Yeah.
Business doesn't. To me, the whole formulation of how I get people to align with the vision is to make it theirs. So this might sound weird to you, but I believe to get to a perception, you first have to have an idea. Mm-hmm. Once you have an idea, then through your own mind, which the idea is a cause, so then your perception is the effect. Now here's the interesting thing. Most people don't look at the two variables that take a perception and make it a reality. And there's two variables. One is action, right? So the biggest conflict that I see in human nature is that the people that are the strongest at taking a what and making it their why are horrible, active people. They're usually high on their mom's couch, sick, dream. I call them the dreamers. They'll sit here and dream about great ideas. You know them, right? You're like, I had one last night. No names, but the guy's like, okay, great idea, and just totally impressed this billionaire that you and I know. Yeah. And he was like almost ready to stroke a check, and he's like, so how are you profitable? And he's like, oh well, my CEO deals with, right? And it's like, okay, because it's a great dreamer. Now that's why you have partners in companies, because you need dreamers, innovation departments, but you also need action. I think the one thing that most people miss, the real subtle difference, which, at the highest level of competition, 1% makes a huge difference. You probably know better than us because it's so apparent when it's physical. But where perception becomes reality, the one thing people don't understand what fits in there is whatever you consider to be inspiration. So some people that are religious would say God. God is the source that sits between your perceptions and reality. So your faith, your inspiration, so whatever that is to you, and so because that's the catalyst to action, but it's also what I believe the catalyst to manifestation, meaning there's two components, and that's why it's so hard for us to manifest what we want. And the people that grasp it, like the Bransons of the world, and they're just different species. And the more I surround myself with them, the more I realize that they have an inspiration in them all day long, right? And that's where my game just took it to the Hall of Fame level. Was, man, I just go through the day now, and it's inspiring. Like I'm connected to some source energy, whatever you want to, because I don't want to exclude anyone. That's the hard part about talking about faith, because people have so many definitions. You're like, I don't want to exclude anyone, but there is a faith involved with your action. Because if you have true faith, action goes better, stronger, farther, and attracts more people. Mm-hmm. But there's still, meaning the action side, discipline, strategy. Right. Now, awareness is where the combination of the source energy or your enlightenment and the action, that's where they merge together. Where that merges together is called awareness. But, I always tell people that there's all these seeds being placed in you. And I just started listening to somebody's name comes to mind, I ping them. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Totally. Right, something comes to me, I take action.
That's why I'm here right now.
Right, yeah.
That's exactly why I'm here right now.
But this, yeah.
So
I call it seeds over needs. Seeds over needs, though.
David's thinking off my brain last night. He's like, I think he's in New York. I pinged him, and I was like, "You're in New York?" And he's like, "Yeah." And
That's awesome.
Right, which is what helps with all the media too. But think about seeds over needs. Mm-hmm. People, the needs are all based on ego. It's insecurity, a fear of loss. If you feel like you need something, that's a fear. That's an ego-based anxiety. And what happens is people, instead of listening to whatever that connection that I'm talking about is, that sits between your perception and reality, they go, oh no, but I need this. Like all the time, like real basic stuff, like I should pick up that check. No, you got 3 daughters that aren't in college yet, 8-year-old. Right? But the seed's there. I've learned, it all comes back, right? That abundant more. That's why I was coaching this guy from Slovenia on that exact point. So being aware, especially when you're starting new projects, especially when you're building.
So I'm sure you guys both have this. You have a bunch of different ideas.
Yeah.
How do you know? Okay, so then you start the action. How long do you stick with the action? How do you know which one is really the one that you want to take and go with?
Yeah, so I'm an abundant person. Number one, the biggest problem with athletes is they stick with the action too long. Why? Because we're taught not to quit.
Exactly.
But the difference is it's not quitting to evolve. Business is an evolution. A football game's not. I think a football game's a revolution. It's 4-quarter revolution.
Right. Yeah.
It's not an evolution. The seasons end, games end, quarter, like literally have ends.
Yeah.
Business doesn't. So what you feel like is, okay, this business is a game, so it either ends or it doesn't, where in my mind, I'm looking at all the points of entry, all the different options, and seeing how they merge together, and seeing how, okay, if this isn't part of it, I'm gonna give it away to somebody else. Right, and then moreover, if my idea is bad, his business since I've known him has evolved from, keeps in my business. It doesn't even look like when Warren and I started. Okay. No media and all this stuff involved. It just evolves, and so once you change your mindset, for me, I'm prioritizing all the different opportunities, and I'm ready to pivot.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to how you want to spend your time. Like, you'll just know based on how the traction you're getting whether or not it's worthwhile with your energy and effort and time. If it gets you excited or if it feels drained. For me, that's the biggest indicator. It's draining my energy or something that I want to give more energy to.
Yes.
Right?
That's a great indicator.
So that's been for me. And then, because that goes back to, you can always hang in there and fight through stuff, right? But there comes a point where you have to make that trade-off.
But do a profit check.
Right.
I'm a pragmatist, man. I was with someone yesterday too, and he's been working this business. You guys know it, and I had to check him. And I'm like, dude, before you take the next step and take another $250,000 bridge, think to yourself, where's my end game and where's the business end game? Because it's time to pivot into something bigger. Maybe you want to do a roll up, or maybe you want to do something else. But because what I'm looking at your business is, you're going to be back to me in a year asking me to make another introduction for another $500,000.
Right.
Like when he did his financing, I could tell Derek wasn't going to be back. Next time he's going to be back was for a raise. He was not. I just knew it, and he was moving all kinds of pieces around. So don't lose sight of business is about profitability. Without profitability, and I can't stress this enough, you gotta love what you do, but without that, it'll be soul sucking. Because people take their passion, like, how many times do you hear this? I love sports. Oh, Eric, how? And then you got the guys who actually love sports and are great at it. They're looking, for actual business.
Yes.
But sports still apply to insurance all day long. I can make anything apply to sports. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Your business applies to every single team, league, individual brand. It goes on and on and on. You can live your entire business.
Education.
Right.
Everywhere.
That's what I try to tell like younger players or people coming straight out the NFL. Is like the skill set that you gain by playing sports transfers over to the business world.
Absolutely.
So well.
All the discipline, the working with others, the teamwork, accountability, all those things transfer over to the real world and transfer over to business.
Yeah.
So it's just a fact of funneling it.
It's so funny though. The hardest part for young guys, because I deal coaching you guys like you, right? Yeah. The weirdest part for me is that guys who have been coached their entire life are afraid to have a coach outside of what they know, because they feel insecure that, oh my God, my coach is going to know that I'm like, dude, since the day I quit football at 22, and I was an average Division III player, but it was my life. You get it, right? Like I went to the college I went to because they let me play. You can imagine the long list of places that want me to play, but they let me play. But once I turned 22 and that season ended, my whole life has been spent on business, right? Whether it was law school, business school, all the things that the minute you're done, take some athlete, I'm 51 years old, and he's 24, and so for literally 29 years, every day of my life, I got as focused on business as I did on football. And the cool thing was, I had a lot more God-given gifts for business than I did football.
I mean, that's another thing, is like you spend, I played 9 years in the NFL, it's 9 years I have to catch up when I'm done playing.
Yeah, just pivot, right?
Yeah, just pivot.
Because you were learning things that nobody else has learned. Right. So if you could then focus somewhere else and combine it with what you learned in those 9 years, Because there's a lot of things you learned about business in those 9 years that I could never know. And I've only known that because I've coached guys like you, and all of a sudden, in Warren, since he played till he was 44, he'll bring up stuff. I call him QB1 Kenobi. I was like, because he sees things differently than I do.
Yeah.
You know, he has this majesty of calmness, and he has a laser focus that I'll never be able to achieve, because the time he's 18 till 44, he had millions of people, and he was the focal point, and he's processing every day. His mind is processing every day in a different way than my mind was processing.
Yes.
That processing that he does, though, that analytical processing of reads and all, who knows what he really did, it makes him in business be able to gather all these facts real quickly and look at me and go, have you ever thought of this? I'm like, how'd you know that?
Yeah.
Like, I've got my head buried in books too much. And so everyone has strength. So I won't let people get away with that whole putting faith in what they don't have. I got to catch up. You'll hear me shift your language because your mind will start believing that, instead of, I got to learn different things to complement all the stuff that you know that we don't know.
Okay.
And you also have a power of attraction that we don't have. You know, we talk about catching up, right? As far as a brand, all those years I was focusing on everyone else's brand. So now I focus on my own brand. But in my mind, I'm not catching up.